morning, church family. Today we're going to be in Luke chapter 23. We're going to start in verse 6. It says, on hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean. When he learned that Jesus was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who was also in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was greatly pleased because for a long time he had been wanting to see him. From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were standing there, vehemently accusing him. Then Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him, dressing him in an elegant robe. They sent him back to Pilate. That day, Herod and Pilate became friends because before this, they had been enemies. Here it is, Pilate sees or comes to an understanding that Jesus is a Galilean, and as a result of that, he should sit underneath the authority of the one ruling over Galilee instead of his district there in Jerusalem. So he sends him to Herod. Herod, being a Jew, he was excited to hear about Jesus. He had been probably hearing much about what Jesus was doing, about the miraculous. News had received him, and he was excited to hear and to see the one who performed miracles. In fact, Luke records that he's excited that maybe he'll be able to see the miraculous and witness what had happened. But as Jesus arrived, it became pretty obvious that that was not going to be the case. That Jesus was not interested in appeasing Herod. And so as a result of that, Herod aligned himself with the Sanhedrin, who was vehemently accusing Jesus. He mocks him and ridicules him and has his soldiers do the same. And in doing so, him and Pilate become friends, where before they had been enemies. For now they had a common enemy, no longer point against one another, Jew versus Roman, but now it was the world against Jesus. And reminded, this is exactly what Jesus speaks about. You see, when so often because of our limited sight, we view the world that we live in regards to the ruling authorities and countries and nations and governments. But in reality, the ultimate reality, it is God and His creation, whose order, whose will is going to rule and reign. God already knows it is going to be His, but we, as the created orders, are continually pushing back or continually desiring our will over God's will. And suddenly this is what it speaks about. You see, we're so on guard as a result of what Jesus has told us and what the New Testament apostles told us about a one world order. The reality is that already exists. It always has. It's always been the world versus Christ. It's always been the world versus God. Since Adam and Eve, it was the created order versus the Creator. But amazingly, in God's love for His creation, God offered a way by which His created order could surrender their will and come back under the allegiance and the kingdom of the Creator. This is what Jesus is offering to you and to me. Will we choose Christ over our own will? Will we choose God's will over our own? You see, this is what the gospel is about. The recognition that there is a war, a battle for our hearts happening. That God desires to return us to the way that He created us to be, in relationship and union with Him. But as a result of sin, as a result of our own will, we oftentimes choose ourselves over God. How will it happen for you today? Will you choose God or you choose self? Which side of the line will you stand on? Because that is what Christ has done. Christ has come to offer you a way to come back to the side of God, to return to how He created you to be. If you desire to do that today, I'd love to pray with you. I'd love to encourage you. You comment in the section below. Let us allow God to reign and rule over our lives, for He is our King. Look forward to continue on our study through the book of Luke tomorrow, to continue through Luke chapter 23.